No, he would probably start for the.
This, like, right now. Yeah.
You seem like a nice kid. I felt
All right, let's start the meeting for August 10th, 2022 at 6 o'clock. Yeah, Jen will not be doing this. Call the meeting to order. We'll start with public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion, not action. Comments from the public? Town administrator report.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
So before I begin with the town administrator report, you'll notice that we've started doing, in addition to the harbor master and the public works report, I have a monthly report that's going to be coming from the fire department and the code enforcement officer. And all of these reports, I created an extra page on the website under public works or under fire department or under harbor master. And we'll have them up there. So all of the monthly reports will be also up there. So then we have all of the departments kind of giving us a recap on a monthly basis, what's going on, and what they've been up to. And those are all attached within this packet that you can take a look at. I guess I'll start with the treasurer's report. It's very straightforward. This was, it's reconciled through June 2022. Tim, our bookkeeper, is still figuring out the reconciliation process. So we just received our statements for July, so he's working on that. And then, I mean, I'm not going to read through all this, but the one thing to mention is the last time there was a treasurer's report, I think, Carol, you had questions under capital accounts, and I talked to Marjorie about it, and I didn't realize that that's always going to stay like that, and it only shows what was appropriated for that fiscal year into the reserve account. So it's not going to show what's coming in and out, and that's where the monthly, so you'll see with this particular month, you have the Machias Savings Bank statement. You will see money coming in and out of there for withdrawals or deposits. You're not going to see anything for this month, but next month when we do it, there'll be significant withdrawals made for the paving expense, for the dredging expense, and so forth.
So, okay, so this,
Yes.
so this, I'm looking at the Machias Savings Bank.
Yeah.
So are these all the reserve accounts? Okay.
Yeah. And so on the system that we use, Trio, which you'll see everything else on it, that will not show money coming in and out. That just shows what the taxpayers appropriated. So on Tuesday, we have the assessor coming, and we are going to do the tax commitment for the 2023 year. And so once that is done, I will at that point transfer the current budget into Trio, and then we'll be able to you'll have a better understanding with these reports in terms of, for the current year. As far as a little recap about fiscal year 2022, I mean, you could see on the report, for revenue, we received 100% of what we anticipated. The expenditure, we didn't, we overexpended on some things, but overall budget, we did really well. And then I kind of, with having new board members, I just did a quick little FYI to try to have a better understanding on how to read these sheets. And I did talk to Marjorie to try to show me an easier way to print it out, so it didn't have so many different columns that were a nuisance and weren't necessary. So if you have any additional questions, I'm more than happy to answer any of those, but overall, this is relatively speaking where we ended up at the end of fiscal year 2022. We do have still new liquor bills that come in, so that will still be adjusted. We are scheduled to have the auditors come out on Monday to do our fiscal year 2021 audit. Once that's done, they'll move on to 2022, but we still haven't completely reconciled every single general fund account to make sure that all the money was appropriately expended in and out of all the accounts that it was supposed to. So, any questions on the treasurer's report?
Mark.
Yeah.
I think you said that Jackie, our tax assessor, coming out.
Tuesday.
How close is she, in your opinion, to arriving at a total town value and then a calculation of the mill rate?
That's going to be determined on Tuesday.
Okay.
So on Tuesday, we have to do, when we do the tax commitment, all of that will get figured out, and then we will commit the taxes. So after Tuesday, we should have an idea of what our mill rate is going to be, and then at that point, we'll print out the tax bills and start sending them out, and then the first payment will be due in September. So
Current mill rate is $13.
13.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was, last time I talked to her, she was thinking we might be at like 14.25, but she was trying to still assess some values of some properties that she had looked at, that she had done a couple of years ago to try to keep it a little bit more balanced, but we also had a lot of expenditures, that we put in the budget that might not make us necessarily stay completely plateaued, but as close as possible.
Thank you.
So I understand the process. Does the assessor actually establish the town valuation? It's not the state valuation, it's the assessor.
She does it off of state requirements.
Right, but the state does that estimated value. The school district uses the state valuation 2 years prior. As that's what the state uses to calculate their subsidy. But what we're doing here for taxes is we actually use sort of an up-to-date local valuation that the assessor comes up with. Is that right?
Through a state form.
Yeah, using the state criteria.
Yeah. All right, on to the town administrator report. The first thing is, a few meetings ago, we had talked about doing a hazardous waste weekend, and you asked me to figure out a date sometime towards the end of August, beginning of September. Public Works is really the department that heads the whole thing. So Chuck, make sure everything is ordered. It takes place at the Public Works Department. And so we sat down and looked at some dates, and so it's going to be September, August 10th from 9 to 3 will be hazardous date. At Public Works, people will be able to drop off things like paint, aerosol cans, things like that. What?
Said August.
September.
Saturday,
Yeah.
September.
Not today, Saturday, September 10th. And then what we'll do is, I was waiting until this meeting to let you all know. After this, what we'll do is there were some suggestions to really heavily advertise it. So we're going to advertise it, but then also put some bullet points of what is hazardous material, so people know what to drop off. And that day, they will take it in, they will process it, and then they will remove it off the island. Any questions about that? And we will not be doing a bulky waste weekend, so that's something that hazardous waste, completely different. Stonework update, on August 24th, we will have a selectmen's meeting. This selectmen's meeting, the only agenda will be the stonework update from Jason from Wright Pierce. And what he is going to be doing is based on all the work we've done the last 8 months, he will be doing his final presentation of what the Stone Pier could look like and what they worked on. And then at that point, selectmen would need to make the decision whether they want to accept that proposal and try to use that to go forward with any kind of funding and move forward with the project, or we want to kind of relook at the agreement and try to, decide that there's more that's needed or we need more meetings or so forth. So August 24th, 6 p.m. here will be that meeting. Any questions?
Is there a report that we're gonna see, a completed report prior to that meeting?
Yeah.
So when do you think we'll see that?
I would assume that I will get that by no later than the end of next week. Because that's something that, they want to give us the report and they want to give us the timeline of, what the anticipated future steps would be, also with the final drawings and everything, so we can advertise that all over the island and share it with anybody that's interested in seeing it.
And then there's sort of two decisions. One is whether we like the plan and the other one is whether we like the contract. I mean, they're sort of two separate decisions, right?
Yes, at this point, that contract as it exists is coming to an end.
Right.
What we will need to do is, we would need to, through talking to them and for you to decide is one, if you like that and then move forward, or if you want to renegotiate a new contract. But then the other piece of it is, Jason, is the one that played a big role in receiving that $47,000 shore harbor grant that we received. And he was going to be the one working with us to try to push us through into getting the FEMA maps revisited and doing that work. And so we would really need to have a separate contract with them because before it was part of the current contract, the Stone Pier. But then, in order for them to work with us on that grant and provide that assistance, we would need something, in writing that says that they'll be working with us on that. So, kind of a couple of different components. Yep.
The report that we hope to see by the end of next week, give me any idea of what level of detail from an engineering standpoint we'll be seeing?
So this is the one where what they were hoping to do is to have the final report with the final drawings and the final, whatever the computer equipment that they use, I don't remember the name of it. Yeah, the other thing is they were trying to provide something 3D for us, kind of a 3D visual on the computer of what the current drawings that, they came up with could look like.
So we don't know whether we'll have that next week or not.
I would be really surprised if we didn't. The last communication I had with him at the beginning of the week, he was pretty confident that they were really coming to a final, presentation, so to speak, for us. And so, yeah, I think I'm almost certain. I'd be shocked if we didn't.
And we'll be that as soon as you get it.
We'll put it on the website. We'll share it with you and just to make sure that as many people see it as possible. So, the next thing is road signs. So, since the paving specifically, I've received a number of verbal comments and a few people through email, some who wish to remain anonymous, some who don't care one way or another, about particularly Cottage Road and East Shore Drive, how people are concerned with the level of speed that is taking place on those roads. People are hoping to see whether there are slow down, children at play, or speed limit signs put up in those areas. And then there was one recommendation about putting no parking sign on the right-hand side of the road across the street from the Box Bombs two houses on East Shore Drive, because they said what they've noticed is people have been parking when Hamilton Beach is full, they drive up further, they park in front of there, they use those paths to get to the beach. But then if people are driving by, then they're concerned that people are gonna get hit when kids are running up the road, so.
There's also, those pathways are not guaranteed access. I think those
Correct,
venues
they're
have the
not
ability-
public,
Right, so, best interest.
they're not public access, that's correct, so. And I mean, I can, we can talk about it now, or I'm happy to put this as a next agenda item.
I would just like to see recommendations of what signs would be recommended to go where. Speed limit signs are easy ones to put up in my view. The yellow slow down or curve signs are really non-enforceable signs according to the sheriff's department. They're just signs that help people see that the curve coming. So I would just like to see the recommendations. I take some interesting comments from people about signs. Some people like them, some people really don't like them at all. Some people don't understand them. As we all know, people don't read them very well, or heed them very well. I will say, I asked two people just recently if they had spoken or reported to the sheriff's department about speeding. And they said not officially, but they spoke to our sheriff, Bob, and didn't get much of a reply, I guess, or acknowledgement. I usually encourage people to report things to the sheriff's department, because if the sheriff's department does not get reports, as you well know, how do they know that there are real problems?
Well, and that's very often that comes to be the issue with us too. It's, if you want to do it the proper way, you call the non-emergency sheriff's number. Oh, well, why don't, can I just have Bob's number? It doesn't work like that. You have to do the, you know, proper steps, and that's where they're discouraged. They don't want to, and like I said, some want to be anonymous, some don't care. Those that want to be anonymous want to complain, but they don't want their name attached to it, so it becomes very difficult to enforce it in some sense. But I do know speed limit signs were suggested on Cottage Road, East Shore Drive, where the no parking. So those are two more specific signs that were suggested for those two roads.
So in our body of government, in what fashion can a speed limit be determined? Do you have the ability to do that as road commissioner? Does the select board have the ability to do that? How does a speed limit get determined?
My understanding is speed limit is determined on this island, and it's 30 miles an hour.
It's 30 everywhere.
So
But there are places
I
where it should clearly be less than that. The area in front of the box.
I don't know enough to know, but I don't think I have the jurisdiction to determine any kind of speed limit.
There was a few years back that we invited DOT to come over and classify the roads or try. They didn't recommend anything.
Really? That's just amazing to me, because that area that I think one person who doesn't mind being public has mentioned is a very narrow road that has some very tight curves that have no visibility. And it's clearly dangerous to drive more than 20 there if you're really paying attention, and there's nobody parked on the side of the road.
Yes, well, if I remember correctly, his comment was basically that 30 is not really enforced now. If you put a sign, it's just a sign. So, you know, enforcement was the big issue.
Well,
So,
Yeah.
again.
what we were told by the DOT and the state police is that the Department of Transportation sets speed limits for communities because they're afraid if they cut every community loose, they'll have 15 over here, 50 over here, 30 over here, and the police will be like, so I don't disagree with you that the speed limit down through by the east end point, down to the cluster housing from the end, it should not be 30 or 35. North Road, maybe it's okay for residents, and then Venice Cove Road, and so on and so forth. So
possible to, I mean, it's a different, several years ago, it's a different administration. I think with most agencies like that, to some degree, the response you get is dependent on the person who comes out, but would it be worth reaching out to them again? And pointing out some specific parts of our community that at least feel to some of us, like a slower speed limit, given the increased amount of traffic on the island, might be in order. And I understand the speed limit sign is just a speed limit sign, but it might help.
You can ask. So you is asked.
I would ask them to do that.
But in the meantime, I don't think it hurts to consider purchasing some yellow, whatever color they are, slow congested area.
Yeah, slow
play,
congested.
whatever the signs are, and consider posting them in that area, whatever area we feel that sometimes it helps.
Put them in concrete, lock them in.
Right here.
Do you think it'd be worth revisiting the roads as far as signage? Stop signs, field signs?
I think it would be good to be sort of systematic about it, so we're not just responding to, a couple of requests. I mean, we can respond to those requests, but I would think here would be another area to,
Yeah.
just,
Because we currently don't really have road. So that we can ask them, so.
And I would also suggest that we consider revisiting the almost annual sit-down with Kevin Joyce and his patrol captains. We used to have a meeting with them almost every year and bring some of the complaints and information to them and talk about how the relationship's going on track. That seems to work.
I will say, yeah, they did come out. Some weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was able to make this up.
All right, so I'll reach out to DOT to see if they're able to come out here and help us reclassify some speed limit areas. In the meantime, I'll order a couple of signs for slow congested area in front of the store, East End and Cottage Road. And then if anybody wants to join the road plan committee, we have lots of openings. All right, so the next thing is Bennett's Cove. I had received some communication from Jackie Trask about, initially it started out with her wanting us to try to talk to the vehicle drivers that are coming on and off the barge, because she's noticing that people are backing up both ways. And she feels that it's a safety risk. She's seen a lot of kids going up and down that road. So I told her I would pass it along to you. In the meantime, I encouraged her that if she wanted to make an official recommendation or a statement, that probably would best to do. And then yesterday we received an email from her. So I suggest for it to be a future agenda item to have a further discussion, but it does appear that she sent some pictures that it's a pretty congested area. And from my understanding, what's happening is people that are going to be barging are driving down and all parking kind of a line. And then when the barge comes in and people are coming off, there's nowhere to go. So those cars start backing up because it's such a cluster that there's nowhere for them to turn around. And so it creates this cycle of cluster, on a different level from the Stone Pier, but kind of you can understand. And so I really don't have any recommendation about how to fix it right now. I did talk to Officer Mailman and asked him to take a drive down there to see what he could do, if he can enforce anything. But other than that, aside from really talking about expanding the road, providing a better turnaround area, we can't contact every single driver that's going to come here. We just have no way of monitoring that as a municipality. So there's only so much we can do to prevent backing up the vehicles. But if we want a safe area, I think, there should be a discussion of maybe doing some additional work down there in the future to try to solve that problem.
Yes, Bob.
There is a designated spot for a three-point turn. I suspect it's happening, it's getting plugged up, we're waiting to go on. I think the concept of widening the road might help. I think the concept of instituting a policy that outbound vehicles stay up high until the onbound vehicles are clear. And we could work with Line Plant on that topic. What's the process for widening the road?
My thoughts are we'd have to get a survey, get a proper, indicate where the road should be. Yes, with an engineer, price.
You can't widen right down to the base there effectively, make more parking because of the wetland. You can't build that wetland. More. Necessarily. The other thought, and I would need to talk to Colby and Amy and those guys to learn whether this is true, but I wonder if we fully investigated and permitted a concrete ramp there, if that would make it easier for things to move more smoothly and take away some of the cluster aspect of things as they happen. When trucks get stuck, that slows things down and that just makes everything go haywire. Clearly, that's a huge DEP issue, it's a neighborhood issue and all those things, but I would suggest that we have a future agenda item to talk about widening the road and improving that rate.
Yeah, I think we need a future agenda item. I think at some point, probably having a discussion with Line Plant makes some sense about. And then we're gonna have to think about where this could work on this island. A waiting area, a staging area, for vehicles that are returning to the mainland, because a lot of them are very nervous about missing the mark. And they panic and they think they're gonna get left, and they don't really know what to do. So I think in the future, maybe this is probably appropriate.
And is that, will that get conveyed back to Jackie in some fashion? And an agenda item to talk about solutions down there?
They already answered the email, so we're.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess not as easily jumping to like a concrete ramp and widening the road, so I would recommend, and I know that we, I was at a select board meeting many years ago when the residents had their attorney contact the selectmen, so my suggestion is we might have an agenda item to discuss barging evidence code and not sort of the, potential improvements, but rather just the use of that as a barging.
Well, I think it would be a good idea for, Lucy, to put it on the agenda item, barge in Venice Cove, and then have the neighbors hopefully attend the meeting and provide their input, because they're the ones that are seeing what's happening down there. I don't go down there when barges come in and out. I have no idea what's happening, so I think that would be a good start to determine maybe what are some suggestions from them. And then see if.
That was my point.
Yes, Bob. One other question, since we moved away from Sunset as a transportation facility, I'm asking, has the select board discussed alternatives for barging access to the island? Stone Pier is problematic, Venice is problematic, have we looked at other alternatives?
Not thoroughly. But the issue with Bennett is that, according to Final Plan, that it's a prime location. That you can hit multiple islands.
It's protected.
And it's protected,
so all those.
Yeah, so it's.
I understand, but I just wondered, have we done any sort of systematic search to think about other alternatives? That might be a good thing to do.
There was suggestions, but never really certain.
So maybe you can discuss it.
Yeah.
I noticed that even with the widening of the road, I don't think it's going to mitigate the issue. There are scheduling issues between which truck drivers are getting on which barge at what time. They all congregate down there because, oh, I could get on the barge, but they don't know which barge. For instance, today, barge came in, Lucas Tree came to cut some of the trees. That was the first barge. The second barge comes in with dump trucks and whatnot, this and that. Another barge came in, that one had to back out, sit outside, but this one unloaded and loaded some of the trucks. Then that barge leaves, the other one comes back in, and it's a back and forth. Now, for instance, backing up of vehicles, there was a lot of the tent, I think it was the tent trucks. Sometimes they were going up and down the road backwards 3 and 4 times, waiting and figuring out which one they're getting. For instance, today and yesterday, I've asked a couple of truck drivers to move. Yesterday, it was one driver was in the middle, and the other guys were along the side in the turnaround. The problem with that is I know the Hansons are here, a lot of young kids and whatnot. If anything happened, there's no way rescue, fire, anybody could get in there. So I did ask the driver, mind, and he was fine with that. I don't believe the driver's call, it's not their fault. Today's incident was similar type of a scenario, but we had an island person parked in the Hanson driveway, one parked in the turnaround. So there was no possible way of accessing any of those buildings, people up in that area. And I did get a nice quick video of, we had the pond filled today. That 18-wheeler backed all the way down. And so get on. It is a situation where maybe just an interim solution might be that they park on South Road off to the side. And maybe there's a radio that can communicate, or cell phones, modern technology. Have maybe only 2 trucks or whatever the town decides, be able to feed down there at any given time. Let's say short term.
All right, any other questions? Vote officer, are you gonna read those, or are you gonna comment on them?
All right.
On the harbor master, vote officer.
No, I usually don't. Like I said, we're now trying to get all of the departments to do a report, and we're putting them on the website. Yeah, so the only other thing is, that I could have put on the TA report is auditors are coming out on the 15th, which is next week. They're new, so it's first time that they'll be doing our town's audit report, so it's required a lot of work on our end to submit everything to them electronically, so they can just come out here for a couple hours. And then the only other thing is I did submit the main bond bank application. We had $975,000 that was voted on for broadband, $250 for dredging. So got that application submitted and working with the attorney and the bond bank to determine what the next steps of that are. So and one of the agenda items today is actually for you to authorize the issuance of the bond. So other than that, I think that's it.
Any questions for the town administrator? Mark?
I want to ask questions about the memo that you sent us. It says coastal access update. We didn't talk about that at all tonight.
So we agenda item to hear an update on coastal access and take action. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh, sorry.
Any other questions? Move on to regular business, 22-069, to review and approve the state liquor license for Shebig Island. Any questions?
Make a motion to approve the state liquor license as presented to us. Big Island.
Carol, second. Discussion?
I just want to make sure we haven't had complaints.
Any complaints?
We haven't received any complaints for the town.
All in favor?
I don't want to be rude, but we're really busy at the end, so we might go, if that's okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, guys.
Do you want to wait a minute? They'll
You want us
sign
to
it and then
sign?
you can just.
Oh, yeah, sure, thank you, yeah, sorry. We're gonna pull about the truck tonight.
You want us to sign through?
Guys, have a good night, thank you.
Thank you. On the objection, we move along. Second item, 22-0070, to authorize the town administrator to sign the local road assistance program certification for Maine Department of Transportation. Yes, Mark.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the local road assistance program certification.
The second? Second. Bob slash Carol. All right, any discussion? Yes, Mark?
So you get a whopping $14,880.
Okay. Still $14,000.
No spins?
Does that go into the capital for?
Yeah, so what we have to do is, like, I have to fill out, on the back end of this, I have to show how the funds were spent on which road and which capital improvements, and so these funds, my assumption is next year, we'll have to fill out a similar report, and I'll show them that these funds were going towards, whatever the road work we do for the paving projects.
Yes. Any more discussions? All right, all in favor? All right, that's item 22-071, to discuss and authorize town administrator to sign and submit the quote for Goldman's asphalt projects for all state construction.
I'd like to move to authorize the town administrator to sign the contract for cold mix paving with Allstate Asphalt Construction in the amount of $164,796.
Wait a second.
Second.
Question?
This would occur in calendar 2022? When would this occur?
It would be it would be late fall
Late fall this year?
this year.
Unless circumstances push them into next year.
Yeah, we're hoping that those circumstances don't happen this year. He seems to be, when I talk to him, pretty confident that he can get scheduled, so hopefully, once I send him this contract, he will come back with a date when they anticipate it coming. So he's hoping for a very quick.
One more question. I want to make sure what I see on the Google map is actually what we're talking about. So Chandler's Cove Road begins at the trap shed, tank trap shed, and goes all the way down to the pier. Does it terminate right at the entry to the pier, or
Right before the park, right?
I think it ends, yeah, right before the parking lot starts, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Right where Danny's house is, so right at that
so it doesn't go, it's not going to take care of the bumps in that area?
parking lot?
Well, beyond, it's in the road.
Yeah.
Below the parking lot, so it doesn't go down there. Is that not part of the contract for a reason, or?
So unfortunately, we tried to incorporate that into the project at one point. Chandler Cove Road ends right at where the parking lots start.
Yep.
And then from there down to the wharf, it's called Castaway Lane.
Oh,
And that was paid by the state of Maine when they improved all of that a long time ago. And I think they paid right over a big lump of clay on that hill. So I know that Public Works is aware of it. And at some point, we're going to have to dig that hill up, try to put some stone, crushed stone or something in there, and try to get something that's going to hold and then repave it. And it might not be cold mix, it might have to be hot top because of the activity of the vehicle.
or just put yellow stripes on it, call it speed.
Sorry, we're trying to finish everything up, and it's just painfully getting closer.
Well, that's a big improvement, what we have on here.
Yeah, so this contract, I'll be clear, this contract covers Chandler's Cove Road from South Road to the entrance of the parking lot, the Old Cart Road, including the turnaround down at the bottom, the tops of Fenderson, which you're gonna have to go down a little bit further to the bottom, of Judy's driveway, and the tops of Caps. Then we will have to chip seal those roads another time. And then we will have some other small items to think about, postpone.
Sure.
Do they do any repairs, like on North Road, and the one by the duck, there's some big divots in there, do they repair those while they're? Yes.
Um,
What happens to those?
Yeah, so they would if we asked them to, but basically that seems to be another area where there must be something under there that's less than a good base. It's usually clay or something, and carbonate, so they have to fix the road, of course. And so the answer is, I think we're going to have to probably handle that locally.
Any other questions? Questions? Okay. All in favor? All right. Moving on. 22-072 resolution to authorize issuance of bond.
So this is, like I said, with the bond bank application that I submitted on the first, the attorney who works on putting all the legal documents together, this is just a standard procedure for the voters approved the expenditure of the funds, the selectmen need to authorize the issuance of that bond. Once you sign it, then it's just the next step for receiving that large sum of cash.
For this, or
We need a motion and a vote, and then I need all your signatures.
All right. Is there a motion?
How would the motion be stated? We don't have a copy of that, do we?
Yes.
You do, just like it says, authorize,
Motion to approve authorizing an issue of up to 1,225,000 principal amount of bonds and notes in anticipation of such funds.
Second. Any questions, comments? Art?
Says that, but just so everybody understands, up to 975,000 is in preparation of the broadband project. Up to 250,000 is for the project. I'm sorry, does this also include the 80,000 that we may have to issue?
we'll talk about that in the dredging update.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All in favor? Moving on, 22-073, to hear an update on coastal access and take any necessary action.
All right, so the memo, Mark, that you were referencing is in relation to this. So it's been on the agenda, I think every agenda for the last couple of months now. With the Chandler's Beach, the signs that you had authorized to order, no vehicle access beyond this point. When you go down to Chandler's to the right, that road that you go down, that protects the stream and dune area, we have 2 signs that will say no vehicle access beyond this point.
And where is that point? The point of no access, is it at the top of that little
They
garage?
should not, they can drive down that little road, but the idea is people should be driving vehicles across that stream and onto the sand, so it'll be right in front of that stream. And we'll see how those signs do and if they do anything. So that's one thing. The other part is, the walkway that's brought a lot of attention in the last couple of months about, people struggling to get down there. I had reached out to the Maine Geological Survey. They really couldn't help us with any kind of sketch. Bob was down there when Pete, thank you, came. I had spoken to the code enforcement officer. Bo and I have met down there with Chuck. I've met down there with the code enforcement officer. And so, long story short, there is a plan of action at this point, and it's going to be a very basic for the purpose of if they do kind of maintenance to what was already previously there, it's not going to require any permitting. And if they put a railing, it's not going to require any kind of permitting through DEP. If we do go through DEP, that will require having designs and things that are more detailed and more expensive oriented around that. And so what we're going to do is right now to accommodate people being able to easily get down there, down that little hill, Public Works will put up a hand railing, probably on the left side as you're going down there, and fix up so the hill isn't as drastic of a drop. We'll see how that works out and see if that is going to accommodate the people that need it down there. So,
Yes, Paul. I would move that we authorize the town administrator and public works department to move forward with the steps and the handrails as described.
So they're not gonna be put steps.
I thought right? They're putting in, put their railroad ties, but in the form of beach pressure treated lumber. Right? They're replacing the steps that were there with something that's not rotted and putting a railing along that section as well.
they're gonna start with putting the railing in and seeing if they can smooth out that bump a little bit before trying to put any actual steps back in.
That's good for the website, totally, but
Well, and that's, we've gone back and forth between Jim and Chuck, and we've gone back and forth, and so I think what, right now, what the plan is gonna be to kind of start it out simple, put the railing in, and see if that divot could really be smoothed out, and so the idea is, we're not gonna be removing any dirt, we're not gonna be digging anything, but they're gonna literally rake down some of that dirt to try to eliminate that bump, but also fill it in a little bit on the bottom.
I amend my motion to say let's move the dirt in such a way that it doesn't move dirt, putting the railing, and the railing will be to move that.
I don't think we need a motion.
We already gave them charge to do
Oh,
it,
sorry.
so.
I don't think, because this was from like a meeting back in like March or April, so there was a motion.
I had a question for Jim, but he and I had a conversation today.
Yeah,
It's a good
I'm
thing.
hopeful that, you know,
And
by
actually,
the time snow falls, we'll have that.
I think having the railing there will make the steps less necessary, because when you're walking down that slope, if your feet start to slide out, you can grab the railing.
Let's hope.
Just in terms of aesthetics, I'm assuming it's sort of a wooden railing. I mean, it's, you know, it's not a metal railing, it's a wooden sort of.
So what they're planning to do is they're planning to use the equipment that you use to dig out a little hole to put a telephone post, not a telephone post. A mailbox post, and they're gonna use the same type of wood
Yeah.
to put that in, and then I'm not sure what they're
Maybe
doing.
it could be a rope.
I'm not, yeah, they haven't figured out those details, but
So it's a metal spike mailbox post.
I don't know if it's metal or wood, I think it's gonna be wood, I don't know, but it's,
Picture showed up on my text message the other day from the shop that wasn't supposed to come to me, but it was of a metal mailbox.
well,
That'll work, that'll work.
I just meant aesthetically, it's naturally
yeah, not like a big, huge.
metal.
So are we good, Chandler's?
Good.
Awesome.
And I just have one quick question. Be very quick. So first of all, I'm glad to hear that this is the solution, because I talked to Jim Butler, the code officer today. He confused me because he said, I asked him if we could smooth out the hump without excavating on the shore. And passed the straight face test with DEP law. And he said, if we do any excavation, we have to involve the DEP. So I'm glad to hear that we're kind
He
of.
was very specific, if you use a shovel to, do small little movement of dirt, you're fine. If you bring any kind of equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Okay, so very quickly, will the railing be on the left as you're
Left.
going down?
yeah.
I'm glad to hear that too, because if you walk down on the left right now, it's a gradual path.
Yeah.
And on the right is the
Yeah.
hump.
Yeah.
So if they smooth that up, or
Yeah.
widen it a little bit. And I'd like to request at some point that they just take a look at the bittersweet, maybe do a little weed whacking down.
Jim said that they could cut back some of it as long as nothing is being pulled out of the ground. So to kind of make it a better accessible path, and that is on their plan to do. They're thrilled. They can't wait.
So, in the walk with Pete Levinsky, we were able to identify that this area that's being worked is close to, but uphill of a wetland area. So it's all good.
Good.
Moving on.
All right, on to the next thing, Jenks Road. So I had, the new owners of 44 Jenks Road come to me, a while back, within the last couple of weeks, and, come to find out, when you drive down to Sandy Point, the spaces that are parked on the left side are all on private property. And when you park there, the path that crosses through the dunes is all on private property. So there was a lot of back and forth, with them. Their major concern was, and what they did initially was, they took some, wood and small, stones or small, pieces of, rock, and they kind of tried putting a barrier, so when 4 or 5 cars parked, people wouldn't keep parking in the dune and created more parking spaces. And people rudely just took that stuff and they threw it into their, grass. And so Virginia has been very pleasant to deal with, has been very, accommodated with the town. They are not, at this point, looking to eliminate any of the parking. They're willing to use their private land to accommodate 4 parking spaces that are clearly there and have been there for many generations. But what they are looking to do is they are looking to restore the dune area around it and prevent from people creating more parking spaces because there's nowhere else for people to park. They have since left, so they're not looking to do anything this year because they're concerned after the way they felt they were treated when they tried, preventing for people parking on the grass, that they were very concerned about the safety of their house while no one was there. So they didn't want to do anything. In conversation with our town attorney about something else, I did mention briefly this situation, and she said that next year, if the town, they're also not interested in any kind of easement agreements. They're, I think, partially seeing what's happening with the hook, and so there's a lot of fear around just being the new guys who are, trying to take over their property or whatnot. But we can very easily do an annual agreement that's signed with your authorization between the town administrator and the property owner, saying that the property owners are provided for parking spaces on their land. And that, something very basic that the lawyer would write out. Nothing really that needs any kind of major attention at this point. I just wanted you to be aware that this has come up, and it's going to be something that is definitely going to become a heavy discussion come springtime. But I think that with all of these discussions about beachfront and access, we have a family that seems like they're more than accommodating and willing to work with the town. And I think that on the town behalf, I think that it would be wise for us to try to, help them in that sense. But that's kind of where that stands at this point.
Yes, Bob.
In those conversations with the new landowners, was there any conversation about what was a pathway from the parking area heading northeast, which is not the primary pathway, which is now a roadway onto the beach, but to the left of that, what had been a pathway has become a roadway? Was there any conversation about trying to restore that?
So their goal is to try to restore as much as possible, while understanding that parking has existed and that path has existed. Ideally, they would like to see that path, and I don't want to speak for them, but through the conversation, path gets smaller. She said her biggest priority is allowing the fishermen access to what they need, because that's definitely in a place where, and she's talked to Gary Ross, she's talked to Jason Skill, and she's talked to the fishermen that use that area. And so she had ordered some small signs that say dune restoration, please stay off the dune grass area. She chose not to put any of that up because she was concerned about her house, but I think she would like to see that road not be a road, but be a walking path. And it's ultimately, it's their land, it's up to them to do what they want to do with it, but I think they're coming from a very accommodating place, wanting to keep 4 public spaces on their property available to the public, but also, if that's being provided, have the town back them up in, you know, and so we had talked about putting a couple big boulders there, which was kind of almost ready, set to do, and to be done, but then there was the talk of, you know, well, that nothing could be done on personal property, it's private property. They had talked to Donna Damon, and Damon gave them a big history. And so I think that in some sense, they got a little spooked, and it was too much at once. And so if we do an agreement drafted by the lawyer, it will allow us to put some boulders on their property to prevent from people driving further on. It would allow us to, you know, have public parking on there. But like I said, nothing that needs any kind of major attention now. I just wanted it to be on your radar because it did take up a decent time of, you know, in the office dealing with this over the last couple of weeks.
So I think we need to put this in the future agenda sometime in the spring. Have either the lawyer draft it up sometime.
Yeah, and she did say that what she'll do is, she'll reach out to me when it comes closer to that thinking about coming here. And so we start that conversation back up and then involve the town attorney and drafting that up and then, you know, coming to some agreement.
And I also think maybe getting either their survey, their land, and kind of where that road is, or what our right of way is for that road. Will be helpful with, you know.
That has been surveyed recently. 10 years ago. So the data is out.
Carol?
So I was just looking at it. I also think we have an obligation to them and other members of the community, to get the community educated about this issue. And I was meeting with the DP about another project. Engine program. I talked with her and she would be quite willing to come out to the aisle and kind of, you know, kind of bring everybody up to speed on how this engine will work, you know, what kind of access is allowed, what can do with the store thing. She's very practical. She's not really, you know, a crazy regulator. She's, you know, understands how communities work. And so I think maybe over the winter, we should make a commitment to kind of do a workshop, because I think there's, you know, people don't realize they should be driving all these things, not particularly where Bob mentioned, that's, you know, it's changed a lot in a year's time, where people are clearly driving over there, not just walking. And so the, you know, the introduction of, you know, ATVs and four-wheel vehicles, I think has increased that kind of traffic, and I think we need to make those owners aware that that's not okay. So I think we should do something, we should commit to some kind of educational outreach to the community. We need to maybe get up to speed first as a group, and then we can hear some information. I think that would go a long way to get people to comply, if they understand why it's important. And that applies to all of us.
And the town files that in the winter. And first of all, I think the homeowner should be aware of that.
They are.
Okay, because I know I get down there in the winter, I'm kind of crazy. I like to walk.
We do have the right of way down to the road, but the parking spaces are completely blatantly on their property.
Yeah.
So,
And that's my point. I mean, while they're not here, I think they'll do more or something.
Yeah.
They should be made aware that, I think it's our intention to keep doing the same as we do with snow blowing.
and that was her intention, was to try to keep things the way they are, not change anything, not have any kind of agreements. I mean, when we started talking about easement, they were very, and so I asked with the lawyer, and we can do an annual, you know,
Yeah.
just very similar to what we do with the contract for the sheriff's house. Just a one-page, very basic, that gives us permission to keep doing those things and gives them the safety net that, because it's, I think what they're looking for is if they're gonna provide this, they want some reassurance that, they can protect their land and kind of restore some of the dunes and not have people think that, or you come into this environment trying to change this place, because I don't think that's where they're coming from at all. So.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Any comments from the public? All right. Anything else?
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I don't think they should be frightened away from the concept of easement. I mean, if you're gonna do this, and they're gonna do it annually, the easement may be the perfect vehicle for them to do it. I mean,
I mean, maybe so down the road, but right now, from the town's perspective, if she felt very strongly opposed to that, I want to try to work with her in the way that we can to
No, I-
provide that
I-
safety, and then maybe someday down the road, but
I've been frightening her away with the concept of an easement. That doesn't have to frighten her, if she's, that word doesn't have to frighten people. And it's what the town would talk positively about that concept, because that parking has been there for forever. And there may even be an adverse possession claim that the town has. So for her to say that she's giving it to the town may not be something that she has the right to give. The town may actually have a claim for adverse possession for those parking spots legally. So she may be giving you something that she doesn't have.
You have any questions, comments? Moving on, 22-074 to discuss the next steps for Indian Point Road as they were discussed in the July 20th workshop, and take any necessary action by choosing one of the following options. 1, fulfill and continue current road maintenance agreement terms and conditions. 2, close out the 2002 road maintenance agreement, a model like Deer Point. 3, close current agreement, and more brainstorming of options and visions for a possible future agreement. All right. Bob,
Move that we move forward with option 3.
there's a second.
I guess I'll second that. Like, we can discuss it.
Discussion. Thoughts, Carol?
Well, I definitely don't think the first number one is feasible, or practical. I'm personally not opposed to option 2. I think there are members of the community who like vehicle access in some form. And so that's why I'm personally looking at option 3. But I think we should put a time limit on it if we pursue that. In terms of like, we need to make a decision in a period of time. Those are my initial thoughts. But I personally would be fine with option 1. I'm really trying to reflect some of the interests. I'm not sure that we can be successful with option 3, but I'm willing to consider.
What are you concerned about?
I think that we have to be on the same page about what the relative objectives are. What I was hearing in our last workshop was an interest in having this town stabilize the beach, erosion in order, and then maintain the road. And I think that goes beyond the scope of what we. So that's, based on what I heard at the last meeting. But I think we won't know until we sit down and discuss it.
Yes, Bob. Sure, I think. Yes, maybe misspoke. In your comments, you said you would be willing to support option one.
Option two, sorry, you're correct, so, right.
I would
Point that out.
I agree with Carol. I think that option three has potential, and I certainly think we need to move quickly with all three parties to try to come to a resolution that is as mutually beneficial as possible, given reality. And I do think there should be a time limit on the discussion. And if we're not able to come to a mutually beneficial agreement by that time limit, then we default to option two. I guess I would be willing to put that into my motion. So to restate my motion to be move forward with option three with a time limit of an agreement by November 1st, at which point, if there's no agreement reached, default to option two.
I didn't hear the end.
My motion would be to move forward with option three with a time limit of discussion and resolution amongst the three parties by November 1st, 2022. And if no such agreement is reached by November 1st, 2022, then we would default to option two.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll second that.
You're a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right.
Can I ask Bob a question? Bob, are you envisioning, or have you given any thought about what size of a group would come back to the public and the board of selectmen with specific recommendation? In other words, who would be working directly in your model of your motion with Indian Island? Trying to come back with possible solutions.
I would suggest 2 members from Indian Island, 2 members from Royal Trust, and 2 members from.
And so your motion specifically said November 3rd, and if number 3 fails, fall back to number 2, is that what you said?
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Any comments from the public?
Last year, it was overwhelmingly voted to fix the retaining wall, put money towards the retaining wall of $60,000. We got another $60,000 to fix the retaining wall. I realized that we had a vote to do the project, which got voted down. And I do believe that most people on the island would like to see that road usable and passable as in the agreement. I think most people would like to see the retaining wall fixed in a way that the road could be utilized for rescue, for fishermen, for whoever. I really feel that a letter was written to everybody to get people not to vote for that petition. And it said that a no vote does not mean we will lose access to the book. It simply means we need to find a better plan. And I think what we're doing is getting rid of access to the book. I'm not sure what you've got coming up or what your ideas are. I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to go down there with you, but I really feel that people, the public, the majority of the public, and a lot of people that signed this also said they'd like to see us be able to have access to the book. And we have a very nice agreement with the owners, the property owners, and the land trust. And I think we should continue on that path to get that fixed. That's
Yes, in the past, we had a mediator as part of the group, that there was such lack of consensus between the two experts that I wondered if we had a mediator come work with the group that you suggested. That might be of real assistance. That it might help.
Can you clarify what you mean by the two experts?
Well, at the last meeting, there was the Indian Island assessment of what should be done. And then there was Pete Slavinsky, who had his view. And there seemed to be two very opposite views of what could be done down there. As a land trust, we're not experts. We don't have, we're not climate scientists. And I think that it's possible that, we could have a mediator that might be able to come and help us work through some of the issues that remain in terms of, who should, can we come to yes in terms of, what should be done? I mean, there is this issue of the road, and Indian Island, for example, has taken the position that they're not going to sue on the road agreement. But a court could make a very different determination as to what the road is or isn't, and what was anticipated in terms of, what the town is responsible for. And I think we're at an impasse as to who should be responsible for what. Sometimes the third party coming in can kind of break the log jam and get us to look at things from a different perspective. That would be very helpful.
I'm not offering a comment on the mediator. I guess I just wanted to comment on again, on the sort of two experts, because I followed the process for several years now, and the expert that the town in the Island Zone hired was Barney Baker, who presented his proposal to the group, and the selectmen opted not to support that proposal. Pete was here as a technical resource at the last meeting, and so I don't see that we're in a situation where the experts disagree. In fact, when Barney, at the meeting that Barney presented the plan in April of 2022, and he was asked some of the same questions, he offered the same answers. So as someone with some expertise in that general area of geology, I don't think we have a situation where we have a disagreement amongst the technical experts about what might happen. So I kind of just want to make that point to clarify things. I think we have differing opinions over what action and how much money should be spent, and what is practical given the long-term scenario of climate change and sea level rise. I think that's, to me, what the issue is under a scenario of sea level rise, what is the practice? I just think that's important to kind of clear. Again, no opinion one way or the other.
Well, I think Barney, is that his name, did believe that there was, at least from his perspective, a solution that could be presented to do some preservation that would last a certain amount of time. The town did reject that. Pete seemed to think, in my opinion, that based on his analysis, that Barney's solution didn't seem to make much sense. So there was, in my view, based on Pete's presentation, a disagreement with what Barney was presenting. And I think again, I'm not an expert, but I believe that there was a clash between those two presenters.
As someone who was at both meetings, I disagree.
Okay, well, again,
Okay, I think
I mean,
we're getting a little off
Yeah.
topic here, so,
but maybe
Well,
that's
I
where
get
the
it.
mediator could perhaps, Carol, you are definitely much more involved and much more experienced than I am, but I just think a mediator could help maybe bring some of us to yes. And I'm not choosing sides, believe me. I don't have a side, because I think what I'm saying as a member of the trust is that we have two responsibilities. And those two responsibilities are to provide access and to protect the ecological value of the property. And that's the only thing we're concerned about. And at the end of the day, if that is to not have vehicular access, then that's what we will decide. And so I'm not here arguing to support Barney's position versus Pete's position. So don't take what I'm saying to mean that I'm disagreeing with you, because I'm not. So I just want to make that absolutely clear.
Okay.
See, I just want to make sure that we have been very clear, and I tried to be clear in earlier conversations, specifically in the workshop 3 weeks ago. But the option, I believe, it's the motion on the table of option 3, closes out the existing road maintenance agreement. And therefore, the town has no responsibility to spend one nickel. But at the same time, the benefits that the public derived under that agreement exist. And if there's some future proposal, as I said 3 weeks ago, that we don't want to rule out any, but we also don't want to be unclear that you put us in a position where we have to move ahead. The road has failed. And we got to do something. And so the action that has been proposed this evening is going to put us in a position saying we got to go figure out what to do on our own. Just make sure that we're clear that have any ambiguity. That's where we are.
However, I think Bob,
I'd like to speak. So that, so you're saying that if the town proposes to enter into a three-way conversation, that puts you in a position where you have to move forward on your own?
No, if the town takes it, you have 3 choices tonight, in my view. You can decide to keep the road agreement you have and then figure out a technical solution, execute it, or you can decide you want to do something which it's me that came up with the idea. Your point is an example of what it looks like to say there's access, but the access is pedestrian. That's an option. I worked hard to be in a position to say to you that the owners were willing to accept that as being the solution and not have there be a legal matter to fight about. And then we also said, as a third option, if people want to think of some new thing, we're not ruling that out, but we are not going, we cannot wait. We're not going to, we cannot be stuck anymore. We cannot, we don't have access in our own private property because the road hasn't been maintained. It was 5 years ago that we had a site walk with the then town administrator about the erosion. We have now come to a point where we don't have any more time. I don't think we have any choice.
So I'm still not hearing an answer to my question. If the town votes to enter into a three-way conversation that starts immediately and goes until November 1st, hopefully finding a solution that works for all, does that bring Indian Island to the table to be part of that three-way conversation?
We haven't ruled, we haven't said we refuse to talk. We have talked again and again and again. Well, if somebody wants to come to us with a proposal, we'd like to do X, and here's how we're going to pay for it, and here's what it gets. I commit to you that we will be willing to listen to that proposal. Whether the owners are going to be willing to agree to that proposal, I cannot commit to do that. There will be an agreement to commit to anything other than what we created, which I am frankly very proud of what was done. I don't regret it. I think it was something that was good for the town. I personally am disappointed at where this house is coming up. And I want to be clear, one more time, that we are willing to listen. But we do not have a responsibility to negotiate to something different that we don't think is satisfactory to us.
Understood.
Your point is held up as a model, possible model. But the problem with that is only access, public access to their point is by prescriptive rights. Technically, anybody wants to make an issue of. Lee Goldman grants access. It's from his area, his part of the property. But there's area between the town road and the property. It's really restricted. And he has restricted rights over it. And he sort of passed them on to the planners. Oh. I think it's a very good model, that would apply here in Hastings. That does mean that there is no vehicle access to your point. That's a problem. In certain case. You really have to park on the main road.
Well, Ted, what I would say is that I would hope that the Indian Island would be open to what the town has offered here tonight, which is to enter into a negotiation to attempt to resolve a problem, a big one that is unforeseen to the town. And I think the town has offered its hand. And I actually applaud the town for doing that. And I think it could have come out differently. And I know how much Indian Island is given, and I said that at the last meeting. And I know how frustrated you are, but I really think option 3 is a good one. And I actually am an optimist and I'm hopeful. And I actually think if we sit down and work towards November 1st, I actually believe that something can come of it. And I think that if you hold off and we work together, perhaps with mediator or maybe not through a mediator, I actually think something positive can come of a mediated solution. And so I think the town has offered its hand. And I would hope that you would see it for what it is. Based on the last reading, I didn't expect it to come this far. So I appreciate what the town has done. And I do feel frustrated. I know how frustrated you all are. But I feel positive about what the town has offered. And I appreciate the motion that Bob has made and seconded by Carol. So I hope it passes, and I hope you will give us the time, the next 2 months to work on it.
Complete the motion, and could I then ask a question?
Yeah.
Motion is made that we move forward with option 3 with a time limit. I'm gonna have to fine tune it, but with discussion between the 3 parties, with agreement by November 1st, 2022. And if not an agreement, they will default to option 2. There's a couple of questions. One is,
is everything still on the table, or is the idea that you'll work together to figure out how to get vehicular access? Is that the goal? What is the goal?
The goal is to, I mean,
And I guess that's my
wrong, it's
question.
just to come to a different agreement. Or either fine tune the agreement that we have, or make a new agreement. Either a parking spot down there, or, I don't know, we have to do something, and whether it's, we drive all the way down with the current agreement, or we don't.
So the last meeting, it was the three options that came on today's agenda actually came directly from the presentation that Indian Island presented. And they made a decision last meeting to pick one of these three options that Indian Island recommended. And this one, so close out the current agreement as above, then more brainstorming of options and visions for the possible future. And then it says, one, many ideas are theoretically possible to consider. Two, benefits of each idea are different, as well as feasibility, cost, and sustainability. Three, like the existing agreement, any new vision should honor the special place that Indian Island holds, respect the property rights of Indian Island owners and the adjoining property owners, and support and promote the conservation easement of Shabig Cumberland Land Trust. And then any future agreements would need the assent and support of the town, Indian Island, and CCLT.
So the number three then would eliminate the agreement. I mean, that's a given, that would then eliminate that. So one question that I have is, does the Board of Selectmen have the authority to actually get out of that agreement when it's at the Registry of Deeds? It was approved by the legislative body of the town of Cumberland, and the legislative body of the town of Shabig is the town meeting. So that's one question that I have. The other question or comment that I have is that several of the people in this room signed a letter and that went to the community that made it sound like they had an idea for a plan, and a lot of people voted thinking that that plan included access to Indian Island. And I think that there is some kind of a misunderstanding in the community as to what that letter actually said or what it did. And I think it would be important to look back at that letter that was sent to the people in this community before the election that influenced them to think that there was a better way. And I don't think that anybody I haven't heard that silver bullet, so I'd be interested to know what that is. But I'm concerned about this board agreeing to leave an agreement or dissolve an agreement so that they can talk about something. Because I'm not sure, I think you need the town attorney to weigh in on that.
Yeah.
I think we could amend number three to not close up with the Board of Indian Island, to not close out the agreement, but to rather, in the spirit of what we've been talking about, the three parties, the two representatives each. So I think we could come up with a new motion that would capture the intent, which to me is for the three parties to sit down and see if we can come up with a solution, just as we discussed, to the access issue at the club. And I think the simple solution is to eliminate closed current agreement and give ourselves a couple months to see if we can come up with a solution. I think there are some better ideas about access, some compromises that could be made. Maybe won't meet everyone's desires, but I don't think we've had an opportunity to discuss that as a group, the parties involved. And just to point out, 2 years ago, I suggested we do that. And I think if we don't go that route, then I feel like I'm gonna be compelled to vote for option 2, which is to, I mean, so if we can't close out the agreement, then we can't take any action tonight, and we're not making any progress at all. So personally, I suggest that we maybe amend the motion, which Bob could do, which is just have the 3 parties meet, give ourselves a couple months to see if we can make some progress towards some kind of solution and to determine whether or not we can maintain some form of vehicle access in some manner, which may not be what it is right now. And so I think there are some solutions, but we're not going to get there if we don't sit down together with an intent to solve them.
I have a suggestion and then a question, if that's okay. So, listening to all the different parties, it seems like the 3 parties are in agreement to work together and come up with some solution by November 1st.
I'd like to comment. I question the sincerity of working toward a solution that isn't a no-action solution. I feel like the Arne Baker plan that was put forward was a gray and a green solution. It wasn't a hard retaining wall. It was a mattress solution with dunes on top. It had dune restoration. It was a very gray-green solution. I have not heard any other ideas put on the table ever in any conversation, any meeting that I've been at in months. So I'm not sure what they are. So I question the sincerity to work through it. We have waited 5 years. We put it on the table. So I would like to see some ideas that we said here. But I have not heard anything that gives me any hope that there isn't anything more than just not doing anything. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I've seen my
Carol,
I only can answer your comment, Phyllis, with that I am fully committed to trying to come up with a solution. And I've told you that personally myself. And I think this topic has become very fraught. And it's partly, we had a mailing, we've had multiple mailings in the community. We've had some, some of the things that have happened related to this proposal are concerning. And I think we really need to just stop and see if, and kind of lower the temperature and see if the group can come up with a solution. I think we have nothing to lose by taking this step to try to work things out. And I really hope, and I don't know how else to convince you other than to say I am very committed to trying to find a compromise, mutually satisfying solution to all parties. And I think it has to be done with the 3 parties sitting down together, which has not happened. And I think, we brought these things up when Barney made his presentations, and he did say in his presentation that this could be, I guess I'm not going to reiterate that. I think I am very sincere about trying to reach a solution and commit the effort to do that.
so question/comment from everything that I'm hearing. I think at this point, and tell me if I'm wrong, to kind of keep everybody on the same page and happy, maybe it is best that you just keep the number 1 on the table for now, and then spend between now and November 1st determining what the next steps are going to be and how those 3 parties can work together. And at that point, if you've reached a point that the agreement needs to be closed out, because in order for us to go into any new agreement, I don't know about closing out the agreement, I'd have to double check, any new easement agreement has to go to town meeting. So from hearing everything, I feel like, and maybe, I'm wrong, but leave the agreement as it is for now. It seems like the three parties are very committed to working together. So keep two people from each party, find a solution, whether and with this solution, it's, this is who we're gonna hire, this is what the work is gonna entail, or it's not gonna happen. I mean, is that kind of not where all this is going, just to kind of recap it
And motion, hold on. I'd like to amend my motion to strike the three words that say close current agreement and leave the motion elsewise as is.
Carol? Are you okay with this amendment?
Oh, yeah.
You're willing to second? Okay. All right, Michael is saying.
Yeah. Seems to me it's fairly simple. There was a plan. Good, bad, or different, there was a plan. And nobody says it wouldn't have worked for a period of time. None of us is helping. On the other side, the people who talk about resiliency, always said, well, there are things we can do, there are ways we can do it, there are ideas we can have, and make it something that work with the natural changes and so forth. But I never, ever heard a concrete plan. So that's called that side. of it. So that's what I'm saying.
Donna?
Yeah, I'd like to clarify the record because the town worked very, very closely with Indian Island for several years. And also, I called Chris Cabot on numerous occasions, who was the director of CCLT. And his feeling was that at that point, they didn't really want to get into the middle of it because they saw it as more of a political thing. And I don't know if he talked to Penny and Diane, but, it was like, okay, keep us in the loop and let us know where you guys are. And so I don't want anybody to think that the town is not working with Indian Island on this project, because that's not the case. And I think the town dropped the ball in 2018 when it was brought to their attention that there was major problems. And then Mark Dyer followed up on it, and there just weren't the votes to be able to go forward. And Mark said it, Indian Island said it, many of us said, if we don't do something right now, and those rocks start falling out of there, we're in trouble. And the same thing with the DEP said, if you guys want this, and we've pussyfooted around with this for so long, and we've had the same people be the barriers every time we got almost to an area, to a decision. And, I'm very disappointed that people would say, and the record would show, that we have not worked with the other parties as a town.
Yes.
Just a comment on maybe the semantics of the motion. Said it took years to come to the final agreement, that the agreement that's in place now. Maybe there needs to be a little more definition of what exactly happens by November 1st. There'll be some committee work. I assume it'll come back to the board for some sort of approval. Indian Island has shareholder meetings, scheduled, and have to vote for that also. End up being more understanding, but I don't think we're going to get a formal agreement. I appreciate the urgency of that thing, but I don't think it's possible. I understand the point, but I'm torn between what appears to be a desire to move quickly and then turns into we can't move quickly. So I like your idea of a memorandum of understanding, and I'd be willing to amend my motion to say that by November 1st, the three parties, as represented by two designated members from each party, are willing to sign a memo of understanding that would then need to be verified by their respective organizations. So the organizations being the town of Shabik by way of town meeting, the land trust by way of their board, and the Indian Island Corporation or Association, whichever it is, by way of their board meeting. So it would be by November 1st, a memo of understanding signed by those 6 people.
I don't think we have a lot of time. I don't think we have another mission. We had more events like we had this past winter. I think the destruction and erosion will be so severe that it's going to be hard to really make it cost effective to bring it back. I feel a sense of urgency when I look at the situation. I think memo understanding is a great concept, but then execution and being able to take care of business, I think we have to do something. Let's see.
Yeah, and you could do something quickly because you have a plan and you have money allocated to pay for that plan. It's the decision of this board not to do that, but you do have an ability to act quickly if you want to.
Okay. So is there
I'm sorry,
any other
I'm
comments?
sorry.
Yes,
Did we not vote on this at town meeting?
as far as,
The plan Don is referring to. I'm asking a question. Didn't we vote on that at town meeting?
for Barney Baker's plan, yes.
And we voted it.
Yes. So as far as my view, the agreement states that the town will maintain the road. The biggest concern was that it just says maintain the road. It doesn't say breakwater or the side. It doesn't say the town is responsible for that. The town is responsible for the road in a certain width. I can't recall right now what it is. So that's what most of the people that I spoke to were concerned about. So if we want to go back and revisit, which if we all sit together, revisit the agreement, whether we put that in the agreement to say the town is responsible to pay X amount to fix that. But basically, what was asked was to put public money into a private plan. Essentially what it was. So that's what people had. That I thought.
We heard it at the workshop, I'm sure.
So that's why if we talk, sit down, talk, might be a change in agreement. It might not all of it might be done by November 1st, but if we all come into consensus that this is the best way to go forward with this, or a new plan. Without sitting, like Carol said, without sitting together and coming up with something, the town is not for Baker's plan, and I'm not for Baker's plan. As far as to me, it's a bank. So that's my personal opinion.
And I do think it is semantics, oh, you raised the issue of what the definition of maintenance is. Having been somebody who was involved in this since the 1980s, trying to come to this, that was the intent, to keep it from going away, to keep the road from going away. And you will read in some of the, if you read the conservation easement, there's a reference about maintaining and that they have the right but not the obligation or something. There's something in there that refers to that. And that was because of the definition that the town of Cumberland, and we are no longer, I know, the town of Cumberland, but the town of Cumberland looked at that word maintenance as maintaining the wall as well, because it was holding the road. And that's why they applied for FEMA funding, and FEMA put all that money into fixing it. So it is semantics, and I understand that a lot of people in the community
feel that Indian Island should be just taking care of their own road and we should all be able to use it anytime we want. And, you know, I understand that, but there is the original intent. And you're right, maybe that should be clarified. But that was, I can tell you that it was the original intent, that the town would be responsible for keeping that road open. And it was reinforced in 2007 when Cumberland applied for FEMA money to fix the road, and to hold the road. So just going on the record with that.
All right, so I'd like to call for a vote.
Hold on, can you just take a moment and give us the motion? Like as you want it, because we have like 10 different motions that we're trying to. So,
I move that we move forward with option 3 after striking the first 3 words. And that we meet as a group of 2 members from the select board, 2 members from the Indian Island Association, and 2 members from the Land Trust. To try to find a solution that meets as many of the goals of the 3 parties as is possible. And that we complete those brainstorming workshops by November 1st with a memo of understanding signed by the 6 members, that each party would then take the agreement back to their respective organizations as soon as possible for ratification, at which point we could then move forward with actual solutions. And that if we don't reach that agreement by November 1st, 2022, that we revert to option 2. Work.
that might be the longest motion. I've ever made.
I need a second for it.
Carol,
I'm just wondering if we can simplify this. There's a lot of requirements in that motion, so I guess I'll second it. I mean, is this like the 4th motion and I'm seconding a new motion? Is that, or is this?
No,
a
this is the motion.
This is the restatement.
This is the motion.
That is
Restatement.
That's what you said before?
that is exactly the-
Otherwise, it's
yes,
like-
yeah,
So I don't need to second it.
okay. All right, so we'll vote. All in favor? All opposed? All right, moving on. Next agenda item 22-075 to hear an update from the town administrator on the report of Barney Baker and take any necessary action.
So the report from Barney Baker is the report that he should have provided the town about the presentation that he made in April in reference to the Indian Island. The last communication that was received from him was that he's now since switched from Baker Design Consultants, which is what he was doing when he did this report, and he's now working for GEI, and he's overwhelmed, and that if we are still looking for the completed project, he is willing to complete it, but the other consideration that he wants the town to think about is that to kind of cut the line where things stand right now without any payment being provided to him. So what the town has received would be the extent of what was is going to be received, and we will not have to pay. Yes.
Do we have a contract with them? So I guess I can't really, it would be good to get a copy of the contract.
He did everything that's stated. I can share the contract with you tomorrow. He did everything that was stated in the contract with the exception of providing the final report and the backing documents that come with it. his suggestion is that if he doesn't provide that last piece of the contract, we would have to cover the cost. So the cost would be, it was $10,000 roughly of the cost for the town, and then Indian Island would be paying the other 10, is my understanding. So no one would have to pay.
So we haven't paid him anything today?
We had not paid him anything, and I think that in the months that I met with Indian Island and him, I think he put in far more time than what was referenced in the contract, so I don't think he would be getting his money's worth out of the time and the effort that he put into it, despite the fact that, you know, the presentation was very disappointing to most people. So,
My question, I think Carol just asked it, have we paid him anything today?
nope, nothing, and that's what, this is what he suggested in the email, is he has not been paid at all, we would not have to pay him a penny. As long as we don't expect anything else, just kind of, you know, draw the line where things are now.
I guess I want to see the contract, and I guess I have concerns, being an environmental consultant myself. It concerns me that not paying somebody for the work that they've done and not finalizing the report, you know, could be interpreted as that person is not comfortable with their work. So I guess you know, and we're kind of sitting here today because of that work. I'd be inclined to ask for the report project, but I want to see the contract so I understand.
That's fine, and his email said that, my only excuse is that I'm overwhelmed with other projects and have not made the time available to compile the work completed to date in a manner that will be acceptable by both clients and stakeholders. And so, like I said, in this transition, he switched from having his own personal company to working for somebody else. And so my assumption is the result of why he has not completed the work that he was doing personally before is because he's busy with his now new job that he's dropped it, so.
Yes, Bob.
Can I speak to the question? Is there a time frame by which we have to answer, Mr. Becker?
This email was sent to me July 20th, so, I mean,
Can we vote on this at our next meeting, having had a chance to read the contract in between?
sure.
And there's a scope of work that goes with the contract. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we can put it on the 24th, if you'd like.
I thought that meeting was solely reserved for talking about stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's not going to the 20th.
Well, I was just asking you if you want to move, if you want to move it forward, then we can put it on there.
I suggest we put it on our next meeting.
Okay.
Although,
Yes.
yeah, I just like to make a comment, having, you know, worked with Byron, he did put an incredible amount of time into that. He's not said this to me, but if I had been Byron, I would have felt that at meeting after meeting after meeting, I was beat up and put on like the Spanish Inquisition. And I don't blame him for just wanting to wipe his hands of this community. But I do feel that he, as Vika said, he put an incredible amount of time into this. And, you know, it just doesn't seem right not to compensate.
I agree.
Can I comment?
Yes.
I spoke with him after we had the workshop. I was wanting to get in the middle of it because I was the project manager for the inside of it. But Payne and Alex, he did really good work. His baseline mapping was excellent. We had some consultants that he paid to do that baseline mapping. Has great value to the town, I think, and to the island. I was disappointed that he felt he needed to come up with, but I think it was going nowhere for him. So I feel he should be compensated, but I have been holding back. We were going to see what the town's decision is. We would support the town's decision. If there was information like the baseline mapping, we would pay him for that. We would pay him separately for that because he did our boathouse, he did up here. So we've got elevations that are valuable to us. So I said I was going to wait until the decision was done.
I think the same is true for the town. we need the information. And I also think we should compensate. So, but I think we should take it up at the next meeting. I don't feel fully.
That's fine.
He said he would finish the report. He would finish the report.
As a standard table,
I want to be clear, we're not asking him to finish the report. We're asking to not decide until our next meeting.
yeah, table is the same. All in agreement for that?
Next item. 22-076, to hear an update on the dredging project and take any necessary action.
All right.
Lee.
I'm gonna do my best to explain this and not confuse anybody, so bear with me. So,
Thank you all.
have a good night. So, as most of you are all by now aware, we had the dredging done, they left. They completed 89% of the work. They had their reasons why they could complete it. Army Corps of Engineers came to us and said, this is how much it was completed. Do you want to leave it as it is or have them come back and complete it? And at that point, the town felt like the work needed to be completed. So Army Corps went back and tried to determine whether their reasoning for why they left and didn't finish the job was substantial or, backed up. And with the decision that they made, it did in fact appear that weather was a big factor and in them not completing the job. So where we stand right now is there is 89% of the work is complete. There's about 11% that needs to be done. Army Corps is going to push forth the efforts to have the same company come back in hopes that they will be the same company to come back and then they take that back on with us. Regardless whether it's the same company or somebody different, we are responsible for our 10% cost of the mobilization fees for them or for whoever comes back to return back here. So that in return is going to add an additional $160,000 to the cost of what the total cost prior being about $625,000. So this winter, when this first came up, we had looked at the numbers and we had met and we had talked about it, and it appeared that we would have all the money between putting $110,000 into the reserve and then having $250,000 that was going to be bonded, that there was going to be enough. Well, come to find out, we're going to be about $22,000 short. If we want to complete this project, what we would need right now is $80,000 for them to start up the process so that they can try to get somebody out here in the fall. The document that I put in, the last page, which is not the easiest thing to understand, but where I went on in looking at these numbers back when this first came to us was the additional upfront funds provided pre-bid, the $28,000. When we pay, when our initial $204,000, we then paid $28,000 on top of that. Well, the second 10%, it was once again 204 and then the 28. They split it up, but within the graph that Mark had given me, I didn't add that into consideration. Hence why we're with the money that we've put aside over $22,000 short. So that money with the way things stand right now is if they come in the fall time when they finish the project, we would pay them right now $80,000, which we have in the reserve. The rest of the money most likely won't be due until after July 1st of 2023. So we would have the time in the next budget year to set that money aside. But that's kind of,
So the initial 202, the original
so the first
20%.
yeah, so the total cost in June of 2021 was the town paid $204,100. But then we wrote a separate check for $28,825. Then fast forward to the second payment that we would have had paid them would have been 204 plus the 20. So it's 232,925, which we would have had the money to do that between the 250 in the bond, and then the I think at that point we were setting aside like 75 or something like that. But then when this project came to light, when I was trying to figure out this confusing graph, I didn't take into consideration that $28,000 for the second 10% of the installment, and then the first 10% of them coming back, and then the second 10% when they're done. And so and so that's where, with the money that we have now, if things go the way they're anticipated to go, according to Army Corps of Engineer, we would need to come up with an additional $22,000 of change. In fiscal year 2024. So next fall, winter, when we start budgeting, we would need to set that into it. But what that would do is that would cover us completely. So, that scope of work, the 10-foot and the 8-foot area, that would all be federally done by that, and it would be all contract by that, so.
And ongoing would be covered.
And
by
ongoing,
the
and
federal
it's,
budget.
yep, and this is, like, Mark, we met with Mark Cable, so it's really, I guess, to you guys, no new information. Bob and Carol and I met with Mark last week so he could touch them up to speed on it, because it's a lot easier for him to explain all this than it is for me. And that's where I kind of discovered my calculation mistake and being a little short. But I think with the progression of when they're going to be coming back and when the work will be done, I think it's still fine.
Are we gonna have a new agreement with,
We will, if they get a quote back from the same supplier,
yep.
to do it rather quickly. If they do not get a satisfactory quote from that supplier, then it has to go out for bid again, and it gets a longer term contract. But
So, and I got the impression in the meeting that it wasn't a guarantee these guys were going to put it on.
It wasn't I feel like I've gotten different vibes from him. Initially, it seems like there wasn't going to be an issue for them to come back. In this time around, he said that it might not be a guarantee. The other point of this is he's getting ready to retire. So I think that maybe that's where I sense his kind of hesitation is about it not being guaranteed, because he's not certain that he's gonna be able to push it through. But
But he
I,
did say that he hoped to finish it up before he retired.
I think so. We have the $80,000 that's in this warrant to get it out to them. Because of the kind of the overall consensus that I received from you guys a couple of weeks ago, I did let them know to just, go ahead and move forward this. And so hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll hear back more information, at which point I'll update you. But they'll get the $80,000, which will be the first 10% of them coming back. And then my guess is sometime next spring, summer, it will be the second 10% of the overall project, what we do.
What's,
Right.
well, I was just wondering, a big part of this cost is the legal, and it just like, it's not a big job, it's like 2 weeks, and you sort of wonder why. I mean, I get that they had to do this supplemental contract, they were the original contractors, and it's justified from our course mind that they couldn't complete it in the timeframe, but, you know, stepping back, is there nobody locally that could do this in 2 weeks, and, you know, I mean, I almost feel like it'd be better if it does go up a bit generally, because it could be lower.
At this point, it's Army Corps project, they're running the ship. So whether they put it out to bid, it's their choice.
It's hard for me to, I guess I understand that, it's just weird, 'cause we're sort of held hostage, we gotta pay whatever it's gonna be, even if it's impractical.
Well, and that was kind of the discussion a couple months ago where, you know, it does seem like the town was being put in a very corner-like position about being responsible for it, but then you look at the benefit that the town will gain for it, and then the future costs that will not be accrued as a result of it. But, you know, looking at, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but the initial project, the total cost was about $2 million. For them to come back and do the 4,100 square cubic yards is $980,000. So it's for such a small, but you think about all of the equipment, and I think this time around they're planning to bring additional equipment, so then they don't have the excuse of not having it. You know, it's like when people talk about, you know, in some sense with the cost of the school, why is the school cost as much money when there's only 5 kids? Because you still have to have the same operation and infrastructure despite how little it works, so.
No, I get it, I feel like something's wrong with the system, but I mean, we went from 465,000 to 624,000, right? Because of this 2-week window.
Mobilization fee.
So, I mean, I think we have to do it, because otherwise we're not gonna have that area included in the grant, right?
Correct.
So I don't think we have a choice, but, you know, it feels like, it'd be nice to find out if there's any place to get some money from. I don't think we have any choice. I am concerned mostly about the fact that he's retired.
And that's what I hope to push it through.
I'll keep my question very simple. So, sounds like we're gonna move forward with the $80,000 thing and fight the bullet. But for next year's budget, what will the amount be if we decide to put it in the capital without borrowing? Would it be $260,000?
Nope, it would be about $22,000, $23,000. So we have 200,
The 250 is already voted into.
so $250,000 bond bank is what I'm going through the process of acquiring right now. We have already 110.
Yeah.
We're gonna be about $22,000, so give or take, probably, you know, add a little bit extra in there for a cushion. But yeah, that's about how much we would need to cover the cost.
And I'm concerned about Mark Cable retiring, but we can't do anything about that. So if they're able to get Burnham to come back here, let's double check.
I'm hopeful that they really enjoyed their stay here and now they're gonna want to come back. Because they seem like they were taken care of well while they were here, so fingers
Hopefully
crossed.
they bring the big excavator on board this time and aren't surprised at the marine clay up in the thing.
Well, and that's one of the things I think with Mark knowing the community and knowing what is needed out here, I think it's wise on the town to try to just, while he's around, let him push and get us to move us.
No,
much
I
as we
agree.
can.
Right, Bob?
He did say in our meeting that they would be bringing the excavator back because of the change in the approach near this wall, steep wrangle, all that stuff. And the benefit for me of listening to his conversation, being part of the conversation with him, was twofold. One, understanding the ins and outs of moving that kind of equipment around in the wintertime. Two, the fact that we probably shouldn't have done it when we did it in the wintertime. That isn't the traditional time, it is considered to be more risky. And even though the weather was unusual, Mark did make the statement, he said something to the effect of by going to your congressman and getting it pushed ahead, kind of cost yourself. And then 3, when I brought up to him on several points, he made the statement that we can't hold the supplier accountable for this and that and the other. And I asked him, why was that? And he laughed and he said, it's in the federal legislation. It's the same thing I deal with when I'm mad at the DMR about some little thing. They can't change it. It's in the state legislation about aquaculture. It's the same thing for him. He's enforcing the laws that were made by Congress. That's all. That's what his job is as a purchasing manager for the Army. So that was very helpful. And you guys already knew that. It just had to get through my head by him beating me over the head with the fact that Congress laid it out. So thank you for that. I think you're right. The best thing that could happen for us is if Burnham comes back and does it quickly, because if not, it's going to take longer, and most likely cost more.
Yeah.
Just so I'm clear on the cost part, you knew about this potential extra cost. And that's what got incorporated into that $250,000 bond. I mean, what I couldn't figure out is how come we're not $160,000 short instead of 28.
So this came to light right while we were finishing up the budget. The $250,000 was actually approved, not in this year's budget, but the last year's budget, there was a vote. And so I checked with legal to make sure that last year's budget bond approval could translate into the current year and that could still be used, which is why we appropriated. It kind of almost happened by accident because we were trying to the selectmen were trying to figure out how much to put into the reserve, and then I happened to stumble upon that article and double checked, and so with the combination of that, it just happened, we happened to have enough to cover the $160,000 cost until I missed that 28,000.
So basically, that was a bond we weren't going to access, or so basically we hadn't pursued the bond.
So we wouldn't have had to access as much as the bond.
So,
Okay.
so what had happened is we went to the voters and asked them if we could do this, because we weren't certain at that time how much it was gonna cost.
So that was the number you came up with.
And then we decided to put it on the budget the following year or something like that, and now that's why
So
we're
you
going
had
to
both
bond.
a capital allocation and this bond.
And the bond, yeah.
I knew that bond amount was a guess at the time, because it was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
almost.
yeah.
And it just happened, I mean, it's a good thing.
It was supposed to have been 204 or 200.
204,000, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to be sure we're totally covered, because
we all set? Do you need any decisions from us?
send a check.
No, I just need to sign the warrant so I can send that.
All right, next topic, communications. Does anybody have any communications?
Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to tweak up on this, but she and I have been working with the Island Institute, who's our designated sort of provider or whatever, on this coastal resiliency thing. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's time sensitive. So if we want to qualify, so it's basically every 6 months we can apply. We can apply for an up to $50,000 grant to support coastal resiliency efforts. And my goal is to get an application in for the September grant, because the other one is until the spring. And we can apply again in the spring. So we're basically going to leave the 50 grand on the table if we don't apply. So the thing that we have to do as a community, and that's a selectmen, is pass a resolution that says, basically, I mean, most of the towns in Maine have already done this, to say that we support, taking climate resiliency into account and, energy efficiency and, and I could send around some draft resolutions that I've got provided, but I would like to try to, if you guys are agreeable, and it's fine if you're not, but if you're agreeable, I think we could pass the resolution at our next, not the 24th, and when we put it on that one, but the next regular meeting, in order to be able to qualify to submit a grant application. And I think the first grant application might be to really get organized and get up and going, not necessarily a real project specific one, but that could then kick a project to apply for in the spring. So if you don't do this soon, we're gonna have to wait till next spring, and I just think there's been a lot of talk about sea level rise and stone pier, and, you know, it seems like a good time to get it moving. So I'd like to, I don't know when the first meeting will be in September, but I'd like to bring that resolution, the 7th, I'd like to vote on that if you agree to that. But I don't want to do it if you feel like it's too much.
Say, put it on the agenda, we'll talk about it, you know, the right information or whatever.
Yeah. And the nice thing about this particular setup is the Island Institute provides some technical assistance, so even if we decide not to do it, they're gonna start putting together the grant application. I would help them, if we would at least read it. But we don't have to put in quite as much time as we do doing work. I think, there'll be other community things to follow up, but this is the action that the board has to take.
Any other communications?
I had a couple, I got a call from a Dana Morse from the Maine
Oh.
Sea Grant Program.
You make Carol for that.
Hey.
So
Dana Morse.
Morse, M-O-R-S. He's with the Maine Sea Grant Program. He called about trying to give the officials, the town officials, information. I don't know if who he's called or is a partner that's calling also several other people.
I think he said that they've also spoken to maybe Gennaro, yeah, and maybe one other committee chair.
Yeah, they're looking at coastal waters, the harbor, select people, just to give them information about the Maine Sea Grant Program. And all
Well,
that.
I'm not quite sure. It's a little more than that. What they're really looking for is, Shabig has become known at Sea Grant and at VMR as being a community that wants more involvement in how aquaculture leases are granted, among other topics. And they're trying to figure out how to engage towns in that conversation without it becoming a big brouhaha. So they're kind of looking at Shabig as a beta site for that. They're trying to have conversations with the civic officials first, and then eventually maybe a public workshop.
So he started talking to me about it. Basically, I told him if the board of selectmen meets, it has to be a public meeting.
Yep.
Whether it's a workshop or whatever. I said, we would basically, they gave him different options, you know, I would open up the floor and then hand it off to them, they can do their review, and then maybe ask the public, you know, have a time limit. You know, at the end, if there is time, the public can ask questions, but maybe solely for the board of selectmen and coastal waters, whoever else wants to ask questions as far as like. So, I don't know, he hasn't coming back.
He's the way to go.
Yeah.
Nah,
Problem. Of course, I got the email from Jackie, so we talked about that. I got the email from Donna about Jenks Road. We briefly talked about that.
So you got an email from Donna Damon? about
Yes,
that?
Donna Davis, yes.
So has that been circulated to the rest of us?
that
or-
was late today.
Yeah, I got it late today. I don't
I
know.
don't think she included everyone.
I'll have to look. If not, I'll send it out.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
I didn't see.
So,
I've been in communication, with, I don't remember what the gentleman's name is, but Senator Green will be here September 7th meeting.
For campaigning purposes or? That time of year.
I
Most
thought she
likely.
was.
I don't remember, I just
Yeah, that's fine.
remember the
She's a good person. She can help.
date.
all right. Any other communications? Okay, to approve minutes from July 6th, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion?
Only one question. What is the little footnote where it said Bo heard, and then asterisk C11 or something like that on page 2? What does that mean?
Where, on page 2 of
I'm
what?
sorry, page 3 of the minutes. Under communications, it's in red, under item 5, communications. Wonder what that means.
So, put a tag on.
Okay. I thought it was some secret code that I had.
Say third. Just the word heard should be there. I don't know why.
That's you approving graces for us, you know.
Great.
All right, all in favor?
Yeah.
Opposed? All right,
Moving on, items to be placed on future agenda. I have minutes, Bernie Baker.
The DEP,
The climate resiliency resolution.
Senator Ray.
Senator Green, and then the thing that Carol suggested, the DEP,
Yeah, that could be when we're not.
future. So we should get it on the list. I think we've got a pretty long list of future agenda items, so at some point, we probably have to go back to more frequent meetings.
Well, we're gonna have to.
In September, we're back to.
And what is that schedule? Is it the first and third Tuesdays?
First, yeah.
Thank you. First and third.
any other,
Executive session.
All right. So, is there a motion to move into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A personnel and take any resulting action?
So,
there's a second?
Second.
All in